Well, thank you, Ms. Lowry. If it's okay with you, would you mind if I start with the agenda items first, if that's okay?
Absolutely.
So the first thing for the board's consideration here this evening is the ratification of the IUP literacy interns agreement. This was talked about at the academic committee meeting, and we do this every year. At that committee, Ms. Lowry, the admin was directed to see what else we could do to increase the number of interns. I contacted IUP. They're able to provide us, we think, hopefully up to 12. And I presented a contract last week. It's going in front of the board this evening. But as reflective of the board's wishes to try to get more, increase the number of literacy interns, I did get a total number of 12 with a total cost of $180,000. So that's more than double what we get both in quantity of literacy interns and the double of price. However, we're recommending that we pay for these through that use of the federal monies that came to the district. This is exactly what I think this money is appropriate for and useful for. The contract also had a conversation with Dr. Julie Ankrum. She assured me that, look, if she doesn't get us 12, there's no way we'll be charged for 12. We'll be charged for the ones that we get. So this is ready for your approval tonight. Again, we did discuss it at academic committee. We followed through as directed. And I just wanted to give the committee one more opportunity to filter this and see if they had any questions. And we would use the federal funds because we could not sustain this every year with that cost, but we can this year use of those federal funds. So I'm fine with it, Ms. Lowry. And I think it's reflective of what we were asked to do, but I'll defer to you and see if there's any questions from the committee.
I don't have any questions. Anybody else have any questions about this one? Okay. Seeing that we have no questions, we will recommend this as well.
Okay. The next thing we want to talk to you about, last meeting, we came with 4 or 5 different positions we wanted, and we said we were going to look into. We weren't ready to approve any of them, but there is one that we would like to at least one more time have a conversation this evening about, and then at the March 22nd meeting, ask you that you approve the position. That's a new position. So we wanted to give the committee time to process this. We still think we're ahead of schedule, but this again allows the committee time to think this through, and allows Justin to provide the committee with some additional information. But here's what we're looking at doing. And Justin's on the call and he can correct anything I misspeak on, but it's our understanding that we have reached our max number already for incoming year of number of autistic classroom students at Ben Franklin. So there's a need to open a classroom to support that. Yeah, we know we're going to have a deficit projected as well as we have the last several years, but with the number of kids already looking to wanting to come here and the number of kids we send to outside placements, we can bring those kids back here to, based on the IEP and based on both parties agreeing to it to help avert some costs. And we had this conversation, but I would like to, bring it to acting memory one more time and then ask the board to approve that on March 22nd because it is a new position. Justin, do you want to go a little bit more detail about the need behind this? Anything I may have misspoke so that Policy and Personnel Committee is aware of it?
No, really, it's just that right now the classroom is at 8. We are projecting another 3, potentially 4 more students that would have the need for autistic support next year. So if we did not add, we would likely have to send another 4 students out to a different program. I don't know if Jared's on the call or not, and I don't know what the costs, savings of keeping that in house, but 4 additional students would have to be placed elsewhere.
And Jared, can you provide some clarity to the board about what that looks like, sending kids to outside placements, the cost?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say probably the average cost for some type of outside placement for the typical programs we send our autistic kids to is probably around $55,000 a year, just for the tuition side. Now, there can be busing that goes along with that as well, depending on where those programs are located. But a good guess would be 55,000. So for 4 kids, we'd be looking about $220,000 for those 4 kids, where I think we've proven with our other class that we can run a class at that cost, if not below that cost, as we are doing that with our current autistic support classroom at Ben Franklin.
And Justin, can you tell the committee about the process that you would utilize to help hopefully bring some of these kids back from outside placement to help, pay for the cost of the new hire?
Yeah, so there's the 4 students that are coming into kindergarten next year, which, Otherwise, if we didn't add this classroom, they would, have to be placed, in an outside autistic support classroom. But then, in addition to that, my goal is to hopefully bring back some of the students that we have already placed out in other programs back. So, I mean, ultimately, my goal is to be able to have 2 classrooms. The max caseload is 8. So ideally, we could bring back another 2 or 3 students. I think at this point we only have 3 students that are out, at that level. But if we can get that classroom at 7 to 8, I think that's ideal. And I've already started the conversation with Amy Filipovich at the IU, just getting some of those initial conversations started about potentially bringing some of those students back.
And Justin, if it's okay, maybe by the end of the week, early next week, can you just memorialize all that in writing it so the board has it, and then they can, I'm giving them till March 22nd if they're okay with it to make a decision. That gives them time to process everything. But at this point, you and I spoke, and Jared, we feel it's necessary. We feel it's needed. We think we can offset some costs, but it is a new position, thus needing board approval. If that makes sense, Ms. Lowry.
Yep, it does.
Okay, Ms. Lowry, I think Mr. Harley has his hand raised, ma'am.
Tom?
What kind of modifications do we have to make to a classroom to accommodate?
Well, there's a couple of things. I'll let Jared and Mr. Zahorchek go in it, but you're maybe looking at some barriers, right? For some privacy barriers and some different little temporary walls, some sensory items. But really what you're going to be looking at is a teacher and an aide, which we did at Ben Franklin last year or the year before, and we showed that we can do it, and we're looking at the same cost again. Justin, would you agree with that, or did I misspeak on anything?
No, the only thing outside of that is, I mean, with an autistic support classroom, you want to make sure that there's a bathroom close by. So, as far as Ben Franklin's building, there is a classroom there are 2 classrooms that are located close to one another that do share a bathroom. And so, it's my hope that, those 2 classrooms be used for that classroom right now is a life skills classroom. So I was thinking that could potentially be used as the autistic support classroom, with the life skills classroom moving down closer to the nurse's office. That way they could share that bathroom as well.
Is there enough space at the Ben Franklin building to dedicate these 2 classrooms?
Yes.
So, Ms. Lowry, I don't know if there's any other questions. I'll turn it back over to you. See if anyone else. I don't see anyone else's hands raised, Ms. Lowry.
Anybody have any other questions, comments, concerns? All right, we will move on to the next item. It seems like this is something we should definitely bring to the board for the meeting on the 22nd.
Thank you, Ms. Lowry. The next 3 items are just some changes in board policy, and we'll start with policy 005 under organization. The current policy allows for the president of the board to appoint community members to serve on board committees, and the current language. Yes, ma'am.
Mike, did we skip an agenda item?
You skipped number 3, Mike.
You skipped number 3.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. I went too quick. I apologize. Yes. Number 3, what we're doing is the same thing we did above. We've been having conversations ongoing with the academic committee, as well as policy and personnel. The board previously authorized us to spend $250,000 on a summer program for our kids in K-5. The next step would be permission to post internally for the position on March 22nd. So if you're okay with it, Ms. Lowry, I'll give the committee now till March 22nd some time, process it, and then on March 22nd, we'll actually approve the posting of those positions. Then that allows us to go out and solicit information and see who's interested, which we already did in an informal manner, meaning a survey. But then folks can put their letters of interest in, and then we can hire at the April meeting, far ahead of our deadline, which the start date is in mid-June. So we're in a good spot where we need to be. If you want me to go faster, I can, but neither way, we're okay. We're comfortable. We know the board already authorized the summer camp. We're just, again, get permission. It may not be necessary, but get permission now to post for those teaching positions. So that way it's done the right way, if that makes sense, Ms. Lowry.
Yes, so I have a process question.
Sure.
We're required to post it internally first?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. That's correct.
And then do we have a job description? I may have missed it.
No, that's
we do.
That's,
Actually, Mike, we worked on that this week. We have a job description I could share with the committee this week.
That'd be great.
Then we'll have to approve that on the 22nd as well, Ms. Lowry, if that's okay.
I see Cinda has her hand up, and then Tom.
Tom had his up first, so I'll wait.
Okay.
You're so nice, Cinda. The academic committee looked at this, and we're fully in favor of it, moving it as quickly as we can. I'd certainly like to get these things advertised as you develop what the jobs actually are. I know this is kind of a moving target, being that this is the first time we've done this. But my encouragement is to let's get it out there as quick as we can, and get the best people in these seats as we can. So I'm excited to see how well this works this year. Thank you.
Cinda?
2 questions. The last time I heard, you were at a cost of about 160,000, so you were well under the amount. Are you still around that cost? And do you have an idea yet of how many kids are going to take advantage of this opportunity?
Yes, ma'am. 2 great questions. First, where staffing numbers or costs are still the same at 166. However, I would add on another $20,000 for busing. So I'm around that number. I'm not at 250, ma'am, but I'm getting higher. So I want to be upfront about that. And as far as the number of people are interested, we did survey people, and there is about 92% of families want to participate. And we're looking right now about 200 students. What those grade levels, I didn't break them down, Ms. Cinda. I'm waiting for a little bit, but we have about 200 families who are interested in summer programming, with about 65% of them wanting both sessions. The one trouble we're hitting into as far as a first look at the staff survey, a lot of people want to work in June, not so many in August. So we're going to have to look at other options come August, but at least we forwarded to our teachers the first round. Then after that, what we could do, and since it's been afforded to the association, is look at IUP literacy interns or others who may be interested. But right now, we're in a good spot for June. We have some work to do with August, and we're below budget, but that's as of right now, Mrs. Cinda, if that answers your questions.
Yeah, that does, and that's good that you're still below budget, because that still gives you cushion to go and spend more if you need to. So that's excellent.
Yes, ma'am.
And
We're fortunate.
I'm glad there's that much interest in people attending also.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I was shocked, Ms. Cinda. I was surprised, and remember, this is only K-5 right now. So I'm excited if we can roll something out for secondary and use up that 250, what we can do. But right now, I think we're in a pretty good spot, and I hope that number stays steadfast when it comes, or increases when it comes time to June. But right now, we're in a good spot, Ms. Cinda.
Tammy Blank has her hand up.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry. I may have missed this because I came in late to the meeting and everything. I know, Mike, you were working on the secondary summer school plans. Have you guys been able to do anything forward that, or what you're doing with that?
Yeah, right now what we're doing is keeping it status quo, meaning summer school still offered because it's always been offered. We're still in the process of developing what else we can do, and we're not sure if we're there yet. But we know this, at the very bottom line, since it's already budgeted in a separate line, we're going to offer summer school for those kids who need it in grades 7 through 12. We're just trying to figure out what we could do with the remainder of the money to do something unique and different. And we're not there, Miss Tammy, and we may never be there as our priorities K-5, but at least we know 7 through 12 have something in place, and that's more of the traditional summer school model. Rob, I know you're on the call. Is there anything I misspoke about that you want to clarify?
No, we're looking, just to be a little bit more specific, we're looking at some sort of mentoring or some sort of social services that could be provided to really dig down deep to get the reasons why the students aren't successful. And we're making efforts to have this summer school for credit recovery and credit advancement, a blended approach where some students come to physical school and some can learn online. And it's probably going to look like credit recovery is in person. Credit advancement can be online, because if you're in credit recovery, it's a good chance that the distance learning was partly a contributing factor. And if it didn't work for you the first time, why would we think it's going to work for you the second time? So we're going to have those services live and in person, obviously with masks and 6 feet in every space.
Thanks, Rob.
Yes, ma'am.
Miss Cinda, I don't see any other hands up. Are you comfortable with moving on, or would you like to give everyone a minute?
Miss
I think
Cinda?
we're good. Cinda and I say we're good.
Okay. All right. The next one, I just need some direction from the committee and have a discussion. Current policy number 5 states the board president is allowed to appoint community members to serve on board committees. The current language is in front of you, and I'll read it just for the sake of those who may not be able to see it. The president may appoint community members to serve on board committees. Community members will have equal rights as board members to participate in public committee meetings. Randy, can you scroll down a little bit? I would like the board, this committee, to possibly change. The current policy goes on, community members are not permitted to have access to or comment on confidential items. What I would like to add to definition is all community members will be brought forward to the board of directors for formal ratification / approval. And here's why. I think it does a nice job serving as a check and balance to the authority of the board president. And it's also similar to what they do at the federal level. When President Biden comes forward and makes a recommendation for Secretary of Education, he has that authority to make a recommendation, and the Senate is the one that approves it. I just think there needs to be a balance, a check and balance there with this type of position. Not saying you should or shouldn't do that. That's ultimately the board president's discretion. I just think there needs to be a check and balance in there. And I talked to Mr. President, Mr. Schroth. He was in agreement with that. And that way it just keeps everyone transparent and everyone on the same page as far as the balance for this, the need for it, and the why behind it. I would also then like time to develop a role definement, have a conversation with the individuals who the committee or the board appoints, and make sure they explain that, look, you're not a board member, but you are a committee and you do have a voice, which they do right now anyways. I just want to be transparent with these individuals, not give them a false sense of hope, but understand what they're getting into, understand what their role and expectations are, but also ultimately have some sort of check and balance for the board to ratify any recommendation from the president. The committee can recommend not to do that. There's no requirement to do such. Our current policy does allow for the president to do what he's doing. I just think this is a nice way for the rest of the board to have a vote and input on these type of decisions.
Just to clarify, this wouldn't eliminate the ability for other community members to come to committee meetings and participate.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point, Ms. Lowry. The point I would bring up is kind of the same thing you're saying, a different turn. I don't know what we gain or get out of this because we already allow the public to do this anyway. So you're absolutely right. Would the board, would public still be able to come to committee meetings, issue their input, their voice, and their concerns? Absolutely, because the board allows that. This just formalizes them and makes them a board, a committee member. That's it, not a board member, but a committee member. So yes, you can argue back and say, Mike, this is semantics. Who cares? It's really however you want to take it, but it would not preclude any community member from having their input as long as the board continues to operate in their current structure, man, if that makes sense.
So while there may be some community members who fall into this category of being appointed to serve on the committee, any community member can still come to a committee meeting and participate.
Yes, ma'am. That's
Okay.
correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that that was clear to everybody who was at the meeting.
Yeah, and my advice, Miss Lowry, would be: does the board, does your committee value and making any changes? And if you do, then this is the change I would make. It gives some protection, I think, to the process and check and balance. But you're right; they're not gaining anything more than what they already have, which you can argue why do either one, right? And I get that, and that's for the committee to make a decision.
Well, yeah, and I wasn't arguing. I was just trying to make it clear that while if this goes through, there will be some committee members who are appointed, community members who are appointed to a committee. There will also be other community members who participate in committee meetings.
Absolutely, absolutely. And
Okay.
where it worked well was with the subcommittee on social emotional learning and the subcommittee for athletics. This one though, they could put them on for any of the core committee meetings as well. But you're right; they would not lose their participation as long as the board continues to operate in their current model. So that's a great point of distinction and clarity on your part, Ms. Lowry.
Okay. Walter, you have your hand up.
Yes, Uta, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to, Mike kind of already covered part of what I was going to say. I think this has worked very well by having appointed community members, particularly in our, the ad hoc committee that Cinda, you, and Uta, in trying to figure out some of the extracurricular activities. I think it also kind of raises the expectation a little bit of the community member that like a board member that's assigned to a committee, we really want them to be there at every meeting, or every meeting that they can possibly make, the same as other board members. So I absolutely agree with Mike's answer. This in no way, shape, or form should impede any member of the community from coming to any committee meeting and expressing their thoughts, concerns, or participating in the dialogue. But I think we are simply trying to raise that level of that community participation and recognizing it more formally.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions, concerns? All right, this makes a lot of sense. So I see that it's on the agenda for later on this evening.
Yes, ma'am. It's just a first reading. It'll be, second reading will be March 22nd, if you're okay with that.
Yep, sounds good.
Okay. The next two are really quick, Ms. Lowry. They're really simple. There's some changes made to policy 137.1, which it talks about home education students in district programs. They changed some language on junior ROTC. We don't have a junior ROTC, but we can still approve the language in case we ever do have it. But at this point, it's a minor change. I don't want to go into too much detail, but it's based on the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2002. I call it 2020, regarding home education students being permitted to join it. We don't have one, but it is recommended for legal liability purposes. I thought I'd bring it forward. We can go ahead and prove it, but it's really not impactful to us, if that makes sense.
Yep, Mike, the only comment I would make is in parts of this policy where it says a student must be blah, 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 and then she/he, can we just change that to they so that it's not as cumbersome to read?
Yeah, I can work on that. I'll get that done prior. Are you okay if I do it prior to the second reading, Ms. Lowry?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep, I can do that. That's easy. Let me make a note real quick. I'm sorry. Okay. Are you okay, Ms. Lowry, if I go on the next one, or is there any discussion?
Yeah. Anybody have any comments, questions, concerns about policy 137.1? Okay. Hearing none, we will move on.
Next one, policy 150. Again, some minor changes. In fact, all they did was eliminate some policy language. What they did was the language on method of determination has been removed from the policy based on some changes through an online tool that the PDE created through the Division of Federal Programs. So this method of determination is now limited and automatically set up. So that's the only thing that was changed. The reason why we're asking the board approve it, this policy is required though for our Title I funding, which we receive money for. Again, they just edited some language to make it more up to date. I found it non-intrusive, non-invasive. Justin, do you have any concerns about the changes at all?
I don't.
Okay. So, Ms. Lowry, it's pretty straightforward and pretty simple. And I'd like this to have the first reading approved as well, if that's okay with you, Ms. Lowry.
Yep. Do we have any comments, questions, concerns about policy 150? Okay, hearing none, let's move on, and we'll do first reading tonight.
Okay. And Randy, if you don't mind scrolling down a little bit. The only other thing we want to do, Ms. Lowry, is give Jared a time to update the committee on our process to replace the supervisor of buildings and grounds. What we're doing now is a national search. We had a number of applicants. We went through Indeed, and I think we got 80 out-of-state applicants, and as well as a number of local applicants. And we're looking to hire in April, but we wanted to, at least give you an update about where we're at and see if you're comfortable with everything. Obviously, we can't talk about the individuals or their credentials, if we're talking about certain names publicly, but in public, we can update the board about the global approach we're taking. And if you're okay with it, Ms. Lowry, I'd like Jared to spend a couple of minutes going over this, and that way the committee feels comfortable and we'll continue to move forward, if that's okay with you.
Sounds great. Thanks, Jared.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Mr. Vukovic said, we, as of the close, I think the deadline to ensure a review of your application was March 1st. So we're still taking applications if something comes in late and taking a look at them. But as of March 1st, we received, like Mr. Vukovic said, probably around 80 applications. The bulk of them, probably around 65 to 70, came in through Indeed, with the bulk of them coming from out of state. So we kind of have been working over the past week or two to kind of go through those applications that came in through Indeed, to kind of narrow them down to ones that we really think have the experience and the expertise that we're looking at. A lot of them had custodial experience, managing custodians. Some of them just had kind of maintenance side. We were really looking for a blend of the two, because that's really what Mr. Trout, the current Buildings and Grounds Supervisor, does, is he handles both the maintenance side of the district, but also the cleaning side, which really are two different worlds. And we are looking to try and bring somebody in who knows both sides of it, because it is an absolute requirement. There are days that Mr. Trout is down in the ditches helping his maintenance guys, and there's also days that he is showing, his custodial crew how to buff the floor and put the wax down. So we are really looking for both sides of it. So I went through the 60 or 70, well, I guess all 80 applications that we received, and kind of have come up with a list of probably around 30 people who I think have both sides of it. And I have been working, we've kind of put a crew together, myself, Mr. Vukovic, Mr. Heinrich, to be part of that interview committee. And we would also like Mr. Trout to be part of a non-scoring member of the interview committee, because buildings and grounds and maintenance is not any of our expertise. So when we are interviewing people, what their answers are, we may believe them, and it may be completely wrong. We know a little bit about it, but we would like Mr. Trout to be part of it, again, as a non-scoring member, to say, yeah, this guy's legit, he's giving you good answers. But we are narrowing that list down. I have it down to about 30 right now. What I would like to do to the majority of the ones that we have on Indeed, who I found have experience, but are coming from all over the country, is to send them out kind of a separate survey with some more details of what the position entails, and actually see if they're still interested, or if they just didn't hit apply on Indeed because they thought it was interesting. I can tell you the bulk of the Indeed, the online ones we got, came from the state of Indiana, which it's not out of the question. We do get confused sometimes with school districts in the state of Indiana because of our name. But we really do need to narrow those down. I don't know that all 20 or 30 applicants through Indeed that I kind of narrowed down to have the expertise are really interested in moving to Indiana area school district, or anywhere near us. So we're going to be sending them out a survey probably this week to really see if they are interested actually in doing an interview with us, so that we can kind of go the next step. We do have a good many local people as well, from the surrounding counties, even outside of Indiana County, who have applied. And we're very happy with some expertise that we have seen from those applications as well. So overall, I think we're very happy with the amount and the quality that we do have. We will be setting up interviews kind of after we kind of try and narrow down some of these ones from out of state, hopefully in the next week or two, with the hope of bringing a name forward to the board in April, so that we can get somebody on board, with the understanding that they're probably not going to be able to come to Indiana within 2 weeks, that it's going to take some time. I think when Mr. Trout put in his resignation a month ago, that the board showed interest in having somebody on board before Mr. Trout is done in July, to kind of shadow him, because he is one of the people who knows the district buildings better than anybody. I don't know if there is anybody in the district right now, other than Mr. Woodring as well, his assistant right now. So we do want to bring somebody on board who's going to be able to go around with Greg and really learn the buildings and learn Greg's expertise before he is done in July. So again, our point is to hopefully hire in April, to have that person here at the latest late May. So he has he or she has around at least a month to shadow with Greg. So that's kind of where we're at.
Jared, I would like to suggest that maybe that survey go out to all the applicants, just for consistency. And then if we are going to interview folks who are from out of state, then maybe we interview everybody via either Zoom or Google Meets. Again, just for to have everybody compete on at the same level.
Yes, absolutely. We can always do a first round of everybody on a Zoom call, and then, if we narrow it down, depending on how many people, we could do an in-person one after that. So,
right.
Yep, absolutely, we can do that. Great suggestion.
And then I'd be really interested in at a different time to get some information on just diversity of candidates, and it seems like the number of applicants for this position are higher than what we've seen for some of our others. So I'm pleased to see that.
Yeah, I will be interested once we send this survey out to, it was great to see all the ones we got from Indeed around the country. I will be very curious once we kind of send out a survey of how many of them were actually serious about applying for the position. So
right,
that's kind of sparking my interest more than anything.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
It's great news. Anybody else have any comments, suggestions? All right.
Ms. Lowry, if it's okay with you, the last thing we, rather than take time at the board meeting, since we're done a little early, can I use this time to talk about Dr. Osborne and the Small Business Institute, and what he's trying to do with that career survey, rather than taking time at the board meeting? We have 7 out of 9 board members on. Would that be okay, or would you like me to wait till the board meeting?
I think it's okay. Walter, what do you think?
Go for it. I want to reiterate the work that IUP has done through Steve Osborne and the Small Business Institute, and the criticalness of this last final piece. And it's going to take the in-person touch from board members and other community members, I think, to get this done and get him this information. And we're operating on the IUP schedule, so there is kind of a timeline that we've got to try to meet in order to get this done for the students before they leave at the end of the semester. With that, I'll turn it back over to Mike.
Mike, if I may, let me jump in for a minute.
Sure.
I went over the list, and the only people that are strong contacts are you, Walter, Terry, and I. The rest of the board is basically not involved. So it becomes a lot simpler on what we're trying to do here. So the people who have to make the contacts are you, Walter, myself, and Terry. Okay, so there were other names on that, but there were weaker contacts and they got displaced. So I went through and sent the 4 of us on that list.
Okay. So Ms. Lowry, there's really nothing to discuss other than that myself, Mr. Harley, Mr. Kerr, Mr. President are going to, by the end of this week, fill out a matrix and identify 2 things. One, who might be able to effectively identify and communicate with the appropriate person in each organization, which, for example, I'd be that person for all the local school districts. And then 2, what person within that organization would be the appropriate person as far as getting their contact information and help fill out and help get the surveys done. As you remember, my first year here, this has been going on for 3 years. My first year here, I did this to all 7 county school districts, and they completed the survey. And I'm assuming Dr. Osborne wants it again. So I'll reach out to those 7 school districts, and in this case, I'll go through their superintendent, and then they'll push out the survey. And Mr. Kerr, Mr. Harley, and Mr. President will do the same thing with those organizations. Basically, they're asking portions of the board and myself to serve as conduits and connectors with these organizations to help them complete the surveys. Is that correct, Mr. Harley and Mr. President?
Yes.
Yeah, that is correct, Mike. Tom, just real quick, I thought Uta and Julia had some contacts as well.
And yes, that's true. But as I went through it, there are people that had stronger relationships than Uta did.
Okay.
Okay.
So I do want to point out, Mike, one issue there. I believe the survey you sent out was primarily one for the education aspects of it, the teacher involvement, the student involvement, and their various expectations. I think this one is more dealing with it at the superintendent or business manager's level, trying to figure out from a management point of view what their expectations are for their employees. So I think there is even though you're sending out a second survey, I think each survey has a different purpose.
Okay, so yeah, I can take care of mine. I have a meeting with the superintendents tomorrow, so I'll take care of mine tomorrow, and we should be a good spot. Is there anything else, Mr. Harley or Mr. President, you want to make the committee aware about with regarding this? Mr. Harley, I just saw your email. Thank you for identifying my connects. That helps me just get this done quicker. I'll be ready tonight.
Well, I'm glad you're having a meeting tomorrow with all those people because you can get them all at once.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's great. Great. So yeah, if we can make these contacts and get these people doing the survey this week, that'd be phenomenal.
Okay.
So, thank you, Mike.
Yes, sir. Ms. Lowry, that's all I have. If there's anything, unless you have anything for me, ma'am.
I do not. Thank you to everybody who came to the Policy and Personnel meeting this evening.
Okay. We'll see you at 6:30 for the Board of Directors for executive session.
All right.
Good night.
Good night.